world there. But what he found, and this is where, big pastors, missionaries, this is where they send their kids, is this school. But what he was finding is that these kids were wanting to chunk their faith. And he was like, Lord, what's going on? And what he developed was these 5 postures of interaction with God. And what he found is that the only one that works is what? Is life with God. Okay? These others are always going to disappoint us. And so I want to talk a little bit about each of the different ways that we can relate with God. And the first one is life from God. And this morning, I guess I hadn't had caffeine yet, and I don't know what happened to the Life from God poster, but anyway, I don't have it. So life from God is kind of the first two, life for God and life from God. I equate those kind of like the prodigal son story, the younger brother and the older brother. So life from God would be the younger brother. It would be the prodigal son. And basically what it's concerned about is, what can I get from him? And the core of it is getting my personal desires and needs met. And it's kind of like we want God to be a genie and grant us all of our wants and desires. That's really what kind of this stance is. And as long as God is doing what I want him to do and giving me what I want him to give me, then I'll be in relationship with him. But as soon as he stops doing that, what am I going to do? I'm going to stop being in relationship with him. And remember, he was trying to identify, why are these kids wanting, these college kids who've grown up in Christian households, why are they wanting to chunk their faith? The prodigal son valued his father's possessions more than he valued his father. He valued really only what he could get from his father. How many of us are the same? We value only what God will give us or do for us. Otherwise, God is really of no value to us. We only seek a relationship with him to get something from him. We love God for our own sake. Characteristics of living from this posture is we want God to supply our needs or desires, but we really don't want relationship with him. We want his gifts and blessings, but we really don't want much to do with him on a personal level. We seek to control God in order to achieve outcomes for our lives. A good outcome in school, a good outcome in your business, a good outcome in your marriage or relationship. God's value to us is determined by his usefulness in meeting our needs. When it comes down to it, it's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? With God. When we fixate on what we can obtain from God, but fail to experience the peace of his presence, in our life, that we're wanting things from God, but we aren't wanting God. And he's it. If we have him, we have everything. He is the uncreated. He is the most powerful one in the universe. There's nothing more powerful than him. So when we have him, we have it all. But we just want things from him, but we don't want him. This is a real appealing posture for a lot of us because it really doesn't require us to change. And it doesn't require a change of heart. And remember, I've talked about that Jesus didn't come to change our behaviors. If he did, he was a huge failure. Because a lot of our behaviors, how many of them haven't changed? He came to change the heart that causes those behaviors. See, he's focused on the heart. And he's not focused on my actions. God is not focused on my actions. He's focused on whose actions? Jesus' actions. See, we will all go to heaven through works. Do you all believe that? I promise you, we will all go to heaven through works. If you're saying, shaking your head, you're in this chair because you're thinking, my works, and I'm not going to heaven through my works. Set up. We are all going to heaven through his works. But how many of us are still trying to focus on our own righteousness? See, and he's not asking us to seek our righteousness. Seek his righteousness. So the problem with this first paradigm is that we would, rather than removing our fears and pains, actually, or let me share this first, that life from God really turns us into a consumer. And it's all take and very little give, okay? And so rather than removing our fears and pain, this consumerism tries to distract us from them. It anathematizes us from the unpleasant realities of our existence. It may numb our fears, but it will never remove them. That's the problem with that life from God, is it will not remove our fears. And I was thinking about this with Judas Iscariot, I think could fit this posture. He wanted to use Jesus. I've heard this said that he wanted to use Jesus for the purposes of overthrowing the Roman Empire. Could it be that he sold Jesus out thinking it would force Jesus to usher his kingdom in and overthrow the Romans? Because he did not understand that the kingdom of Jesus that he was talking about was the kingdom of heaven, and that he was king over all. He was only looking at this realm. He wasn't looking at the greater realm. How many of us today have sold Jesus out for our own purposes, not understanding that relationship is available? So the next one is life for God. And how am I on time? Do y'all normally go to 12? Okay. Because I want to be sure to get us out of here on time. We have a lot of relatives here in town for the Georgia Vanderbilt game. So got my priorities straight. I'm just kidding. So life for God is the next one. And this one is about accomplishing task for God, that we think that that's the most important thing. And the older brother in the prodigal son story rooted his significance in serving the father. The older brother said, "All these years I have served you. I have never disobeyed your command." Because he faithfully worked for his father, he expected a reward. It's kind of the quid pro quo. I'm doing this for you, so I expect that you are going to do this for me. Does that make sense? And see, that's why so many people get disillusioned, because it's like, Lord, I'm doing all of this for you, but you aren't pulling through for me. You aren't doing what I want, or what I I want you to do. So the older son did not know his father's heart. He was not at home in the father's heart. There are many Christians today who are slaving away in the father's fields like the older brother. And they think that they're at home in the father's house. They may be loyal, hardworking, dutiful Christians. And all of this is based on my actions. But being at home in the Father's heart, y'all, this is an actual issue of the heart versus anything that I'm doing. When I'm talking about being at home in the Father's heart, that is an issue of our heart. But the way that this works is, how many of us grew up in households where you weren't with your natural father, you did not feel safe with him. You did not feel loved by him. And I didn't mean to share this, but I think this is important. That the left and the right hemispheres of the brain process information very differently. So the left is going to process information logically, sequentially, verbally. The right side processes information in pictures, experiences, and emotions. Okay? And so the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain can have two different views of God. The left hemisphere, because you can teach this side, is verbal. You cannot teach the right side. It's nonverbal, with the exception of music and poetry. That's why music can go so much deeper, because it really affects your emotions where other things can't. So the left side's view of God is what you've learned about God and what you've been taught. But the right side's view of God, guess where that comes from? It comes from experience. Specifically, your early experiences with your parents before age 6, that is how the right side will view God. And so that's how you will actually feel about God. So if your dad was basically distant growing up and was non-relational, then you will feel God is distant and God is non-relational. Does that make sense? And so to change the right side's view, you cannot teach it, because rational left brain knowledge will not override experiential knowledge. You have to have a new experience to override an old experience. So the only way to change how you feel about things is actually have a new experience with it. And so that's why heart sync is really valuable, because it gives you the ability to have some new experiences, to see that God is not distant, that He is with you. And that it's a very powerful thing to experience. And so a lot of us have grown up in households where we tried to earn our Father's love. I resemble that remark, because I tried to do that. And so you become a Christian, and those same principles are going to still be there. So you're going to try to earn God's love. Does that make sense? So when I'm thinking about life for God, I was thinking about the C.S. Lewis book, The Screwtape Letters. How many of you have ever read that? Anyway, there's a senior demon, Screwtape, who's disciplining his younger nephew, Wormwood. And Wormwood is young and incompetent. And so Screwtape is writing him these letters on what he should do with the person that Wormwood has been assigned to. And he gives him lots of excellent advice about how to subtly tempt a human being away from thoughts of God and one's neighbor toward thoughts of